Yo, my peoples, what's up? My name is Jason, and I'm from the Shelf Stories YouTube channel, and I'm here in the Dice Tower today to review Etherfields. This one was designed by Mikhail Orak. I hope that I got that pronunciation correct. Published by Awaken Realms. It is a adventure game for 1 to 4 players. 50, 60, 70 hours of content in this thing. Many different missions and scenarios. Open-ended exploration, not a hack and slash, but using your cunning and your wits and a little bit of luck to get through all of the crazy things that happen in the dream world, the dreamscape that you will be getting presented in this box. So I'm a little bit Johnny-come-lately when it comes to reviewing this game, at least my full thoughts. I've been giving them on a podcast. But in terms of a video review, Tom has already reviewed it, gave it a seal of excellence, did some playthroughs of it on the live channel. You've heard other reviewers on the other side, which that I respect, like No Pun Included or Shut Up and Sit Down. So you're hearing all sorts of stuff. It's a very divisive product you're getting at the end of the year. So I wanted to do something different with this review. I wanted to try to move the conversation forward. There's a lot of conversation. I want to take in elements of what others have said and provide context for my own thoughts. Hope it works out. A little bit of a different review than you might be used to. So without further ado, let's go to the video tape. I'll show you Etherfields, then I'll come back and tell you what I think. All right, welcome to Etherfields. So before I show you mechanisms, components, any of that kind of stuff, I want to show you the board. So you might be used to a board that is, for a big adventure game like this, to be laid out in landscape. And there are a couple of elements that are, so like the card holders and tracker and everything. However, for the most part, the board is laid out vertically in portrait mode. So you have the lady over here, and the cards are going to be oriented top down for the most part. So, and there's not really a lot that you could do about that. You can't turn the cards landscape. So if you were used to this, if you're used to playing in landscape like I am, it might be a little bit of a difficulty for you. However, I do it anyway. I just do the best that I can. I'm used to it. Just wanted to highlight the issue and just show you this whole big old thing before I get into zoom in for some of the other stuff. All right, there she is. Laid out in portrait like the game wants you to lay her out. All right, so first thing you're going to do, obviously with a lot of games like this, you're going to open up the rule book, and it is small type, lots and lots of stuff to do. But probably the best thing to do, go to game setup, starting the campaign, and it'll say starting the first game, like it'll tell you to pull out a tile. So it'll tell you to pull out I01X right over here, which is the first quest card, and then you will begin the game that way. What I recommend for people is to absolutely do this. I almost wish the rulebook had said, like, stop and play. Do not read the rest of this thing before you've played through the tutorial. So I'll show you the tutorial, but I just wanted to highlight for people who are breaking into Etherfield, unless you're a person that just like loves to luxuriate in rules and figure everything out, play the tutorial first. It does a real good job of setting things up. So I'm going to show you some tutorial elements right now. All right, so this is the player character. So this is the first thing you want to grab and organize before you get started. I chose the specialist. There are 4 in the base game. He is the gizmo guy, the tinker. I tend to favor that kind of play style. So you're going to get your fixed deck over here. As the game goes on, you'll be able to curate this, buying new cards. Eventually, you're going to have to kind of shuffle some cards out. So that's a ongoing kind of deck construction area. I know this game is often called the deck builder, but I would say it's more of a deck construction idea, where between the big adventures, you're going to be able to curate this. So for the most part, as I'll show you in just a minute, the main action is on the top left. These are resources that you can spend to interact with the environment. You can also use them for whatever action. So like any dreamer may re-roll a roll. Their rolls are going to come up in as you play the game. So you could use it for the resource, you could use it for the power here, or you have a progress card. It'll say, place this card for fight. So this one is going to be a whole bunch of words you don't understand, but just know that it lets you fight better. You would place the progress card down here, and you would spend for whatever the resource it said. It will go in your discard pile, and now you have that. And this thing will last until, like you can actually last this as long as you're playing across multiple adventures, multiple dreams. If you pack up the game, then, well, it resets and it goes back into your hand. A couple other things. So, like, this is like currency, ether. You'll earn that along the way. You'll take wounds along the way as well. If you get 8 wounds, you're done for. If you have to, let's say you go through your whole deck and you have to eventually reshuffle over here. So I can kind of move that over there. What you're going to have to do when you reshuffle is either take a wound or take a couple of cards off the top of the deck and seal them. Sealing them is take them out of the area, so you can kind of like leave them off to the side over here, and they don't go back in your deck until a game effect specifically allows you to unseal. So the more you go through, think of it like Gloomhaven a little bit. You're gonna kind of like hand management, lose some cards, and try not to get too down low. It isn't as bad as Gloomhaven, but if you get too down low, then you're gonna lose, just like in that other game. So then the last thing you're going to do in order to prepare for an adventure is grab the Book of Secrets. I can zoom out a little bit to get a little bit more of that. The Book of Secrets is a nice big fat book with all of the story elements. So there are numbers. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers, but you can see the numbers. And you're going to have that next to you as you begin your adventure. All right, so what I'm going to do is just show you how to begin a dream. And this is, you can begin any dream like this, including the tutorial. The tutorial starts you on this top area over here. This is where the main action, the main guts of the game. The bottom of the board, I'll tell you about that in a little bit. That's the dreamscape. But the main action, it happens on this side, the top half of the board. So then you look at your whatever dream it is, you consult the setup. The setup tells you which tiles to get, and generally will show you the victory condition. In this case, it's just, learn the game. They get much more complicated than that. You would grab the setup tile, or all the tiles, and then consult whatever says setup, and you put it down there. So then you would consult, there we go, the number, right? So I'm matching up the number and the number on the board. So I'll just kind of put that there. There are going to be times where the number is at a different place on the card. Let's say the A2 was here. I would put the card here, or I put it here. The game absolutely plays with orientation and perspective and all that kind of thing. But for the tutorial, just kind of like a simple card goes right there. So then you take your mini, or as many players will take everybody's mini. This is my contraption dude over there. Go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. Okay. So then, and this is the core of the game. I mean, there's so many rules to this game. There's so much to keep track of. But for the most part, the core action is fairly simple. You're going to travel between areas, and you just have to spend out of your hand, like a cunning, the yellow resource in order to move orthogonally. And you're going to interact with some spaces. So like if I interact with this one, this is a block symbol, means that I can't do it again. But if I lay down some cunning equal to the number of players, I can check the yellow altar, quote unquote, and I read the paragraph. Here, it's not based on the number of players. It's just 6 green resource. I will consult a different paragraph. So, and you would just, discard a card. So let's say I wanted to go over to the green guy. Oh, there he goes. He's laying down on the job. Boom. I would grab 6 resources. So you see I have 1, 2, 2, 1 of green. Discard them, and I would be able to read the book. So that is like 50-60% of the game, or permutations thereof, as intimidating as the rule set can be. One minor thing to note, just to kind of, in terms of getting started, you notice that there's this block area, and this one does not have a block area, which means that you can do this as many times as you want. That's really important to really be observant of the different keywords. This one says assault, and there's so many keywords. If you are ever stuck, pay attention to what the board gives you. This means one shot. This means repeating. So generally, a lot of times you find that if you're stuck, there's like a repeating action that you might want to do over and over again, and then it will unlock for you. So then this has progressed a little bit. So my dude is running around over here, doing the numbers, opening zones, perhaps encountering stuff, but we're not going to spend too much time with that, are we? Spoilers. All right, so I have scrolled the camera down to show you a couple of things. So if you remember, this map tile looks like that in the back. That's actually going to be, the non-setup ones are going to be all set up here when you're doing a main dream. So they, whenever a card says, go fish it out, it'll just generally be in that stack. Sometimes, though, you will face an enemy. This is what enemies look like, and they have a couple of rules for activation. You keep the enemy there, and then they will activate depending on what is happening with the turn deck. So the turn deck, if there's no enemy, it doesn't do anything. You just kind of like, count your rounds. And, you definitely have a penalty if you run out of cards. If there is an enemy, though, what you would do is you would consult. So let's say this would be, just for simplicity's sake, it would be activate blue, activate yellow, and then some of them are going to activate red as well. So then, just kind of consult the activation and then move on about your day. And then you would track that by turning the card over. So a little bit of a unintuitive thing going from face up to face down, but at least you have the advantage of kind of knowing what's coming and planning your turn that way. Also along the way, you are going to get some items. These are pretty exciting. They're global. They're really awesome. You can either use them for the resource, or they have some sort of power written down there. And like everything, the art is just pretty neat. You also have this tracker over here, which is the hours tracker. This is kind of how the game does game balance. So you can, at a lower player count, you get more hours, and this gives you basically extra activations at your commands, so you could use them to either move or bring a turn card back into the pile, so you have a couple of extra turns to do your thing. So you finished the tutorial, and you have done your adventure, and you got all the items. So I got the items over here, and you've basically learned the game. Or at least the part of the game that occurs on the top of the board, which is generally a dream, which is your main adventure. If you could think of an RPG, you've gone through the first dungeon and you fought your first bosses. Now you go to town, and the town areas is the dreamscape. This represents a much more kind of sedate, reflective, a chance to catch your breath, a chance to kind of explore and learn more about, the world and what's going on, and choose your path, which is the most important thing. Choose your path in order to figure out where you're going to go next. So let me go ahead and zoom in over here. I'll get that a little bit centered, and my character. So I have one character, so I just kind of use him. But if it's multiple characters, just like in any good RPG, they all kind of combine into one, and you can kind of move them around. And you don't use cards here; you just move, and you do whatever it says. So let's say I'm moving down here. This means that when I land here, I draw from the Fate deck, which the Fate deck is just right over here. You draw a card, and it could be either good or bad. Resolve and done. You're not meant to spend a lot of time over here. This phase, again, is just meant to kind of be a way to take a breath and go about, prepare for later adventures. So then you go over here, and this is where the game will kind of get in your way a little bit. So then let me go ahead and zoom up there. There they are. You would pull from the slumber deck. The slumber deck, this will open up at the end of the tutorial, and this is stuff that gets in your way. It could be just a random instruction, or it might spit out an enemy, and then you would have a slumber encounter, which is basically you would go back up to the main board, beat like a boss or something like that, at a very, very small map, and then come back to the dream world and move on about your day. It's kind of a way to gain a little bit of loot, and kind of wrinkle up your town experience. But for the most part, it's none of those things are meant to take away from the main dreams, which are the heart of the adventure. So how do you unlock the main dreams? You make it all the way down here, and you get a key. So generally, you would then consult your once you earn that key, you would generally consult what you got, some quests. And the quests generally involve keys to open them. You need multiple keys, so if you notice that there's only one key in this area, you would kind of go around. and go get the key again. So that's how, like I said, things are repeatable unless they specifically say they're not repeatable. Last thing I wanted to show you guys is just all the stuff. So generally you are going to have dividers, and these are of all your player cards and everything. One thing that you can do is, in at least that Dreamworld phase, is go to the market. So I have all these influence cards. You can purchase cards for the in-game currency, which is Ether. And you also have secrets. Do not open this deck. There's all sorts of stuff in here. And then you are going to consult. If you do unlock a dream, you begin one of those bigger adventures. They would tell you kind of pull a couple of dreams. So like if I wanted to go to IO2, it's going to be comprised of a couple of cards that are along the way. So then IO2B, lots of B, lots of C, lots of D, and so on. I would pull those out, and I would also pull out the map cards. So here are some map cards over here. You'd have setup, and then, IO2. So then you just take this bunch, and if it was IO3, you take that bunch, on and on and on. So many things. The minis. Oh, by the way, I have no idea when she shows up, but she's going to show up eventually. So that was Etherfields at the table. Normally what I would do is I would break the Etherfields down into my familiar categories of thematic headspace and strategic headspace, kind of theme and mechanism. But I want to do it a little bit differently, and I want to do it in a way that is in conversation with what others have had to say. And I think that it breaks down in kind of 4 major buckets. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. To help me break the game down, I'm going to borrow from the Broken Meeple, Luke Hector. So he is a man that I very much respect. I have worked with him on some video projects and podcast projects. So he's given me full permission to use some video clips of his in this review. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out clips from the different buckets that I'm going to establish and hear his perspective, critical perspective, if you've seen his review over on the Broken Meeple YouTube channel, and I'll provide my response, hopefully get a little bit of a faux conversation going. All right, so the first area is rules and accessibility, getting into the game. A lot of people had a lot to say about that, but I will let Luke tell you what he thinks.
E for ease of play. Is the game easy to grok? Can you learn it fine from the rulebooks? Can you get up and going nice and quickly? I want to eat this rulebook and spit it out. You've got weird things like morphlings, you've got different types of actions, you've got different types of cards, all the different influence cards, you've got items, the luck die, the item market. I'm not even entirely convinced I know how the item market works. When you discard an item, does it go back to a storage? Does it go back to the item market? You then have to buy it again. I'm not saying the game is unplayable, but it's going to take you a lot of time and a lot of investment to get through it.
It's not great. I agree with Luke to a large extent. I think what this game feels like is Awaken Realms. I don't know this for a fact, but what it feels like is that Awaken Realms is a very closed design studio, or at least for this game. And the play testers, the people who are involved in development, play testing, and crafting this game, a very closed circle. And when that happens, you just you sink into the system, and you just know it back and forth. And so within that, that immersion level, everything flows. I can honestly say that once I got into it, everything kind of clicked and came together. I wasn't consulting the rulebook by like Dream 3, so to speak, around there. I wasn't for little bits, but I wasn't really consulting. I wasn't living in the rule book like I am with other adventure games. It took a while, though. It took watching playthroughs, multiple playthroughs. It took different perspectives, playing the tutorial, watching playthroughs of the tutorial, and BGG, resources and everything. It was a very high barrier to climb, which it makes sense because it's whenever you're moving into the mindset, the communal mindset of a pretty closed group, it does take a while to get in there. So that's how it felt. So what I will say is, I guess I disagree a little bit in the sense that once you are in it, I think it comes together. I think it comes together. Maybe other people have different experiences, but there is a very high barrier to climb. Luke, I absolutely agree with you there. So the second bucket I'm going to take is narrative, storytelling. Does the game immerse you? Do you feel at one with your dream walker as he or she adventures through the dreamscape and figures out what in the world is going on? So Luke did not say a whole bunch in his review about this particular point, but there was one little picture that I'd like to show you. The point about disjointed narrative. Sorry, Luke. I caught you a little bit mad there. Wasn't as mad about this one, but you get the point that, like, I think when you get a campaign from a board game, a box full of, like scenarios, we expect those scenarios to kind of occur in some kind of sequence, or there to be some kind of through line under there that takes you from point A to point Z and all the beats in between. And this game doesn't really have that. It has scenarios that are frankly very disconnected. One group can go through, a sequence of dreams, like they, not to spoil anything, but just kind of like taking the tropes, get lost in the woods, exploring abandoned funhouse, in class with your underwear, expected to make some kind of speech or something like that. I don't know if that actually happens. I didn't encounter the school one in Etherfields, but who knows? It could be in there. And they're disconnected like dreams are, but is that a fun board game story to tell? Maybe is the storytelling is in the character. A bunch of random stuff happens in the world, but does the character have a through line? Do you discover things? You kind of do, but without spoiling too much. You get a couple of tidbits here and there. I don't know that you ever come to like some grand narrative when it comes to your character. But is that bad? Are there different stories that board games can tell? It seems to me that Etherfields is not trying to tell a coherent narrative. It's not trying. It's trying to tell an anthology story. It's trying to immerse you in a cool world and just give you these splashes of story. And there is a through line. It's just subtle. It's maybe too subtle for some folks. But for the most part, it's almost like playing a board game version of Twin Peaks or what's that one? Black Mirror. Not as kind of like low down and crazy as Black Mirror or something like that, but it's trying to tell an anthology story, seems to me. Does it do that? I think it does. Having played, over 12, 15 of the dreams, I don't mind. I love dipping back into the world and seeing what new dream is there for me. And yeah, I kind of agree with the criticism that I could have used more of a coherent story for my character, because you have the same character throughout, but you can't change. I wish you couldn't change, and I wish that character had developed, but they don't really give you that to you. But is it inherently bad? Is that a bad form of storytelling? Does Etherfields fail in that? I think that Etherfields just doesn't meet expectations, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It means that we need to rethink our expectations. Maybe. So speaking of expectations, let me go to the third bucket, which is the player side mechanisms. I just mentioned player development, but let's just break down what exactly is happening on the player side with the personal board and the deck building and all that stuff. Luke, I'm going to go back to you. Take it away.
For the most part, the tactics is fine. I mean, you use the deck of cards, they've got different abilities, but they're not particularly interesting abilities. And even when you level them up with, when you add different progress cards to your deck, they're not particularly interesting abilities either. Whenever I bought new progress cards, it's a luck of the draw as to what you get. You've got like about this many cards in that box, but then you just draw 3 of them and you decide what you want to buy. There's no guarantee you can afford any of them, and even then, there's no guarantee that the cards you buy are any good for you.
So I just mentioned Luke mentioned the word deck building. It is in the rule book many, many times about how your character has a small deck and you're going to be deck building the entire way. And I'm going to put that in scare quotes because I think this game kind of does a misstep by identifying so strongly as a deck builder. because that has expectations too. Expectations that, like I'm going to be like Dominion or Aeon's End. I have Aeon's End right up there, a couple of the deck builders, where you start with a weenie deck, but then you really feel the difference as you go along the game. You get more and more powerful cards. Every card that comes in is more powerful than anything in your hand, and the cards come in fast, and there's agency. There's a market there. I have resources, money of some kind, currency, and I choose to craft my deck. And this game does not give you that. You pull 3 cards whenever you get a chance. And those 3 cards might either be not go with your deck, or it might just be the same exact cards as what's in your basic deck. If you're going to call yourself a deck builder, you kind of have to answer to those expectations. I almost feel like the game should have called it something different. I think it should have called it deck crafting, deck construction, deck something. Something to indicate that it isn't that your deck necessarily gets bigger and better. It's supposed to. Just by being fatter, it's better. Because you need so many resources, and like turning over the deck is so painful. But in that particular case, I actually disagree. I don't want the deck building to be thick and rich. I don't want to pay more attention to my player board than I am to the scenario, to the environment. The deck is just a means of entry so that I can, do the character, do the skill checks, and have the cunning and do the movement. It's just the means to an end. I don't want. It sounds weird, right? I don't want my deck to be interesting, but I don't want my deck to call my attention. I guess that's the best way I'll say it. I want to be in the scenario. I've played, you play Sentinels and Multiverse, your hands are, your focus is there. You play Mage Knight, your focus is in the cards. What's going on in the board is not that interesting. In this game, they want you to focus on the board, so I'm actually kind of glad that it's light tactically. Could it have been better? Do you often have times where you don't have a lot of agency, you don't have the right resources? I don't think it happens that often, honestly. And you get multiple turns, and in solo you get the kind of extra turns. And sometimes you have like exactly what you need. And very often the scenarios will have ways to save a lot of time. Like you go in this one entrance and it kind of bypasses some things. You get items. I would much rather have that than have like a tight deck building experience. So I'm going to call that, relative to the entire game. I know I'm sounding like Mr. Positive over here, but I have to be honest. I recognize Luke's very well articulated point, but I feel like the actual the play of the personal character is in the right direction. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's in the right direction. So the final bucket is in basically how the board plays out, how the game challenges you as a gamer. So I'm going to split this into 2 because there's 2 big phases to the game. There's the dream phase, which I'm going to put second, but that in-between phase, the dream world phase, where you're walking around. I call it the town. Like in a JRPG, you're walking in the town, doing your, gear up things before you go out to adventure. Luke had a lot to say about that, so I'm going to let him explain it.
The issue with the immersion is the level of grind in this game really pulls you out. You constantly rinse and repeat these slumber tiles to ad nauseum levels. Yeah, I've lost track of how many times I've killed the wraith from behind me, or whatever it's called.
Loop-de-loop. Loop-de-loop in more ways than one. You're loop-de-looping through the dream world phase. You're also loop-de-looping through the slumber deck and the fate deck pretty often. If you are pinning your experience of this game in the first couple of scenarios, you're not going to like it because you see the same cards over and over again, and you have to fight the same wraith over and over again, which is a sin. I can't believe that made it past playtesting, that you'd never fight the same enemy. Especially, you might fight it twice between each dream mission, the same creature, and you only get a couple of creatures at a time. The slumber deck fills up. Believe me, once you're into like dream 10, that thing is nice and fat. The base cards have changed because you've met those conditions. Everything gets crafted and goes pretty good, but it's very slow going. The game is really demanding a lot of patience. Luke called it padding. I think that this is where all the padding is, to be quite honest with you. Not all, but most of it. It's right here in that Dreamworld phase. It could have been executed so much better. But should it be excised? Should you just get rid of it? I think that would be a mistake. I think that I'm hopeful that Awaken Realms looks at it and goes, you know what, we kind of like fell short here. This is where a lot of the complaints are, and I think they've heard. So they're releasing alternate rules to kind of get people through that. I hope they don't just obliterate. I hope there's a lot of like potential there, because I like that in between breather, mess with your resources type experience. It's part of the JRPG experience. I think something as simple as not making sure that you don't fight the same thing. And if you beat it, it's out of the deck. Or it kind of shuffles in another card. It's something where you're not fighting the same thing over and over again. Something where you don't, maybe not even fighting at all. Like, you beat it and it just gets removed from the deck and it gets reshuffled when you restart the game. Just that simple thing, like cut out at least a good 10% of my frustration. Because I eventually just did that. I eventually just, I'm not going to fight you again. I'm going to just, fight you once, fine. I'm going to go on to the next stream. House rules, oh no. But the fix that simple and it's just screaming in your face is my game. And I want to get to the good stuff. Speaking of the good stuff, I think Luke has something to say about that as well, and I'll talk about that.
I've played through a lot of the dreams, and some of them have been great. Like, I've been there and it's like, oh, this is really cool. Distant setting, a bit of investigation, this entity's really cool. And you get into those dreams and they immerse you in and they're fun to play, even if they can be a little bit trial and error. But then there are certain dreams I've played where it literally is just a crapshoot. It's literally just luck of the draw as to what you do. You've got a bunch of stuff. Go look at them. Okay. Oh, that was bad. Ugh. Oh, that was bad.
The dream adventures are what you're paying for when you buy this game. Full stop. That's it. Now, the way Luke put it was, some of the dreams are awesome. Some of the dreams are difficult, unfair, whatever. And I'm going to agree exactly 100% with Luke and so many of the reviewers who've looked at this game and been frustrated by the Dreamworld phase and frustrated by a certain amount of dreams. But I'm going to flip the way Luke had it. Some of the dreams are difficult and frustrating, but some of them are sublime. They're fun. I always love when a game just leaves me with a giant smile on my face. And there are some dreams, and actually I did a playthrough in the One Stop Co-op shop at the end of that first dream. I was smiling from ear to ear at the end of it. You couldn't see me. I was behind the camera, but I was like, wow, that was so much fun. Rewarded for cleverness and some neat little things that happen along the way, some neat little flavor text making me laugh. And this game has that. Is it buried under too much stuff? I guess that comes, that's where the subjective part is. And I'll get to my final thoughts, right? My final thoughts are this game is an 8 out of 10, right? What's good about this game is sublime about this game. Some of the best storytelling gaming that I've experienced. And for me, that's what I look for. I think some people look for different things. They look for replayability, or they look for, a coherent narrative all over the place, or they look for just kind of like smoothness. I look for heights. I will encounter a difficulty. I'm willing to kind of like skirt some house rules if a game can deliver the height of experience, if it makes me feel that emotion, and Etherfields does that. I would say that Etherfields kind of has a 70-30 thing going on. 70% of the game is good. Maybe even 30%, 40% is really, really good. And 30% of the game is useless grind. For some people, that 30% is too much. Luke, what do you think about that 30%?
It's hard to place this one because there are moments I really did enjoy in playing this game. I've got to put it in the middle and call this a 5 out of 10. This is an average game at best, but this could have been so great.
It was enough to get him to, call this game a 5 out of 10, which is... because that's what he valued. Like he looked at, we're looking at the same game and he just has a different experience, different expectations. And I see everything that the critics see, but sometimes you, as a gamer, you just have to figure out, okay, what's my fun? And does this game deliver my fun? And Etherfields, for the most part, absolutely does. I'm completely looking forward to some of the fixes. I'm looking forward to maybe kind of further content, but I'm so glad I played this. And it could be higher. And Tom's thing is higher. He gave a seal of excellence. I'm below that. So Tom wins in all things in a dice tower. But I'm really happy I played it, and I'm really hopeful that there's more to come. And I would invite folks to really engage in the conversations. I would invite folks not to look at people's underlying rating, because this game is a little too complex for that. This game there's a lot to it. Some parts are a 9, some parts are a 2. I think people are giving their averages, and they're giving what they value in a board gaming experience. And it's all different. We are all different. And our board gaming community is better for that. So once again, my name is Jason, and I am from the Shelf Stories YouTube channel. I have interviews, I have book chats, and I also have my Shelf Help series where I give tips and tricks on how to become a happier gamer and a happier person. So thank you for listening. I'll remind you that if you can change your mind, you can change the world. So until next time, later everybody.